Welcome back to Bakes with Edwin. I am Edwin Michael, and we are going to be doing some fun cookies today. Everybody loves chocolate chip cookies, and that's what we're going to start off with. They are really easy to make, really quick to make, so if you're a last minute person, this is definitely something for you. We just have a few things that we want to cover. When it comes to baking, is you want to make sure that all of your ingredients are out and about. You don't have to be as crazy as I am when it comes to having the ingredients already weighed out, as well as sitting on the table for us to just pour into a bowl. I typically don't do that for my own personal bakes, but for other stuff, when I'm more in my professional realm, I am actually going to measure things out to make sure I have everything before I begin a bake, because that could cost me a lot of money. To start off with, what we're going to do is I have my mixer here. You don't have to use a mixer. I will tell you though, it is handy to use. But pretty much 90% of your bakes you can do by hand. You'll just build up some arm muscle while doing it. So to start off with our chocolate chip cookies, what we're going to do is we're actually going to take some butter, some brown sugar, and some white sugar, and we're going to cream this all together. What we're looking for is this to be nice and smooth, no lumps, that the butter is very well incorporated into this. We want to make sure that we are getting everything broken down. And if you don't happen to have brown sugar, it's actually pretty easy to make. All you have to do is just add 2 tablespoons of molasses for every cup of white sugar that you need to substitute it for. And while that is creaming, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to take my flour, my salt, my baking soda, and I'm just going to mix that all together just to make sure that we have it evenly distributed. We're going to definitely be sifting this in a little bit to make sure we scrape off the paddle a bit, because we got some butter chunks sticking to it. And we also are going to want to make sure we scrape the bowl a bit, just to make sure that we don't have any butter hanging out underneath the paddle stuck to the bottom of the bowl. Make this very light and airy. We don't want to have this be very dense, because what we're doing is we are going to have the baking soda help with the leavening, but we also want to have air whipped into this, because that will also help with some of the leavening of our cookies as well through the steam process. When the butter melts, it's going to release steam. One of the common mistakes that people make when they make cookies, or actually when everybody is creaming the butter, is they're not creaming it long enough. And when you are creaming the butter, unless it states otherwise, you want to make sure you're creaming this so it's light and fluffy. Well, I'm not necessarily talking about it's going to change color to a lighter color. If I wasn't using brown sugar, that would definitely be the case. Alright, so now we got a nice, very light texture for our sugar and butter. We're just going to quickly clean off that paddle a bit. The butter sugar mixture off the side of the bowl. And what we're going to do now is I'm going to add the vanilla. So We're going to turn that back on. We're going to add the vanilla. Then after we get that incorporated, what we're going to do is we're going to slowly add in our eggs. This is another area where it is easy to mess up when it comes to baking. What you want to do is emulsify the eggs into the mixture. And so we want to do that slowly so then it doesn't split and doesn't look like we're making scrambled eggs. You can see the egg has been incorporated, so we're going to add some more egg. The emulsifying process is when you are trying to introduce a liquid into an oil. These things are not naturally able to bind together. So we have to actually force it or help it along to get it to combine. So that's why you want to go slowly, and we're doing this in 3 intervals. Because if we do it too quickly, what we're going to end up is seeing something that resembles scrambled eggs. Alright, so we don't have any egg showing up here, so what we're going to do is we're going to clean off our paddle once again. And at this point, what you should be feeling is a very nice, airy mixture. And we need to make sure we remember to scrape down the bowl. We want to make sure that we don't have anything underneath it that did not incorporate into the mixture. And it looks like we do have a little bit there, so we're going to put this back on just for a couple more minutes before we add our flour. Alright, so what we're going to do now, since everything's incorporated in nicely, is we're going to take a sieve, or if you have a sifter, you can use a sifter. I like using the sieve because I feel like it goes a little faster than a sifter does. But to each their own there. And what we're doing is we're going to be aerating the flour as well as making sure that we don't have any impurities in there or any clumps, because sometimes the clumps won't come out of the flour during the mixing process, and you end up taking a bite of cookie and end up with a mouthful of flour, which is not pleasant. And we're going to break up those little clumps that we have going on there. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn on our mixer to number 1. I said number 1. Because otherwise you end up with a big floury mess. And as you can see, it doesn't take too long to get most of it incorporated. We are going to want to scrape down the bowl a little just to make sure that we don't have any flour hiding out any place else, and not to mention to get it off the side of the bowl. We're gonna turn that back on, just to let that finish up there. And then, after we do that, we're going to take our toppings, or not toppings, sorry, our additions. So this, what I have is chocolate chip and walnut. I love chocolate, but not that much. And the walnuts will give a nice little crunch factor to it. And so all we're going to be doing is turning this on long enough to incorporate it. And as you can see, we have quite a full mixer. If it gets too soft, what we can do is we can place this in the refrigerator. for a few minutes while we get our station cleaned up so we can actually get this panned out to bake. Alright, so now since we got that all cleaned up, we got our sheet pans, which I use a silicone mat for. You can bake it directly on the pan if you would like. You can also use parchment paper if you would like. It all is based off of your personal preference there, as well as your pans. My pans are quite well used, so if I did not put a parchment down, it's going to either stick, or depending on what I'm baking, it might add a little more color than I care for. So some other fabulous things that we will also need is means to actually scrape this out of the bowl. We have a few things. We have some scoops that you can use. They look like traditional ice cream scoops. Well, at least this one does. This one's a little smaller. You can use those depending on how big you want your cookies. Depends on which scoop size you go for. Another thing, which is this is what I used when I was growing up before I even knew that there was such a thing as a scoop for cookies, is teaspoons or tablespoons. That's what I used when I was growing up. I like to use the scoops personally because they will actually give a better portioning size for it. So I don't have some cookies that are too big, some cookies that are too small. I will just always have a cookie that is just right. Alright, so we have our cookie bowl here, and what we're going to do is I'm going to start off with my red handled scoop, and we're going to put some cookie in there and break my scoop. Okay, so we're going to have to try that again with a different scoop, apparently. I don't even know why I did that. Luckily, I always have my backup scoop. It's the same size, and I've had this one longer, which is probably why this one works a whole lot easier. And so what we're going to be doing is we're actually going to be doing this 3 by 4. So each tray will be able to have 12 cookies. And that's for only for the smaller scoop size. You're not going to be able to get that with my larger one, which we'll try that one out, and hopefully it doesn't break on me like I did with my previous scoop. Our cookies, they're evenly spaced. If you want, you can press them lightly. However, they are small enough so you don't really need to. So we can put this in the oven at 350 for about 10 minutes. So while that bakes at 350 for about 10 minutes, let's try this guy and see if we have better luck with this one. Hopefully, it doesn't follow suit of its smaller counterpart. Well, these are not cookie scoops. Don't ever use these for cookies. Except that guy. The issue with the scoops are when you're left-handed, it's really hard to find quality scoops that are comfortable to use. At work, when I scoop cookies, I am actually using a trigger one where if you're right-handed, you'll just use the trigger, but I have to go this route for it. It's not as comfortable to use, but I've broken less scoops. It usually takes me about 4 months to break a scoop at work. And I make a lot of cookies. So while that's baking, what we are going to do is we're just going to get the next tray ready. You could actually do both trays at the same time. You'll just want to make sure that you rotate the tray because one thing you want to remember is that every oven heats up differently, and you don't want to be restricting heat from part of your bake because then you'll have your stuff not baking evenly. That was rough. We'll cut the last part. Okay, so after waiting for about 2 minutes after pulling these guys out of the oven, we're going to now transfer them to a rack so they can completely cool. Because when you leave them on the pan has a lot of heat still built up into it. So it will continue to caramelize the bottom of the cookie, and which could result in a little more of a bitter taste to it. Or it could also just dry out the whole cookie altogether. And who wants a dry chocolate chip cookie? Come on. They're not supposed to be crunchy like those Chip Ahoy cookies are. That's why baking them at home is so much better, because you know the quality you're going to get. And that is a perfectly done cookie at the bottom. All right, so we have our cookies all out of the oven. They're all nicely baked. We got these two fabulous guys here. This one here, I did not press, and you can see it's a thicker cookie. This one is a thinner cookie that I did press down. So we do have the two cookies side by side, so you can kind of see the difference between them. I use the same exact scoop for these cookies. So it really just comes down to what you want. Sometimes you want to impress the people with a nice little larger professional looking cookie, so that's the one where we press. Sometimes you just don't care. You just want to quench a craving for a cookie. And so why bother pressing? Just scoop and throw them in the oven. So what we want to do, take a look at, is the interior of the cookie. And I want to show you how that looks. It's going to be a nice, soft interior where you have a noticeable crumb. And you'll be able to see that there's walnut in it. You can see the chocolate in it. It's fabulous. And you can eat this with a milk of your choice. So that's it for Bakes with Edwin, and I want to say I really enjoyed hanging out with you all. If you have anything that you want to have me cover, just let me know. I'll be more than happy to cover it in a bake. If you have something that you want to see baked, definitely let me know. I'll be more than happy to entertain those thoughts for you. But as I said, I'm Edwin Michael. This is the end of Bakes with Edwin for this episode. Give me a thumbs up if you do enjoy what you've seen, and we'll see you next time.